back to the show. I'm sitting here getting all tangled up in my cords. How are you? Happy October. Turn this music down so you can hear me. I feel like I just sat down for the first time all day today. Up, went out to the forest to do my cardio. There's like a lot of people there. More people than I thought on the trails. Saying hi to people, did all my cardio. When I got a bite to eat. Then I went to order my new iPhone, and I don't think there was any in stock, and there weren't, so they had to order everything, and then that took a long time. There's a bunch of people in the store. I had to go to the grocery store. Finally got home and running around all day long, taking care of some errands today, but here we are. Thanks for listening, and this is your first time here. My name is Michael. I'm a women's photographer from New Jersey. I've been photographing women for over 15 years or so now, hundreds of women, and we're here to answer some very common or not so common questions that women may have about the boudoir photography process, to make it easy, to make it smoother, and so everybody walks away with a pleasant and nice experience, because as we've seen in this show, it's not so simple, nor is it straightforward in a lot of cases, and we want you to be smart, shop smart, and have a great experience when you go out and looking for your photographer. And now as we head into the fall, especially, this is important because a lot of people getting married, coming up on the holidays, which are a busy time for women's photography. So here to give you a smooth process. And every week we answer a question, and it's supposed to be a simple question, but knowing me, some of the times they get more complicated than they need to be. I try to make this a short show, but it turns out to be a longer show in some instances. But it's important information, so I appreciate you listening, and hopefully this is super helpful. And today's question is shocking things you should ask your boudoir photographer. What do I mean by that? Well, you would think that this would be more common sense things, but no. Remember, in the crazy world of boudoir photography, you can't take anything for granted or as a given. So these, again, I think we've had a theme over the past couple of weeks of sort of necessary things you need to ask a photographer when booking with them. Never assume in the world of women's photography. So we're going to be going over a couple, not a lot, but a couple questions you should be asking, things you think you may not need to ask, but you definitely need to ask anytime you're getting involved with a woman's photographer. And I think I'm going to cover 3 sub-questions on this today. And the first shocking thing you should be asking your, air quotes, pro boudoir photographer is, what is your experience in boudoir photography? May seem like a obvious or maybe thing you shouldn't need to ask a women's photographer, but you will be shocked. And remember, when somebody calls themselves a pro, that doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean they could have picked up a camera for the first time 2 weeks ago, and now they're calling themselves a pro photographer, and out there claiming that they're changing lives. That's our theme here. Everybody is changing lives. So, and we've given example after example of MLM Janie 2 weeks ago, leaving her MLM, and now she is calling herself a pro women's photographer with no experience, no ability, no technical skills, no nothing, looking to get you in her door to experiment on you. And that's literally what it boils down to. So anybody can call themselves a pro. We've talked about this tons and tons of times. So you always have to ask somebody about their experience in photography. How long ago did they start? How much did they enjoy photography before they started to become a pro? And make sure it's been at least a couple of years, because it takes a while to learn how to do this. It really does. It's not like you could pick up a camera one day and 2 weeks later be creating beautiful images of women. It just doesn't happen that way. Just like you could not pick up a guitar and 2 weeks later call yourself a pro guitar player. That'd be kind of silly. But as we talk about, that's what happens in women's photography all the time. So you just don't want to get caught up with somebody who just like 2 or 3 weeks ago was an MLM boss babe and now is claiming that they're a pro women's photographer. And you're saying, Mike, does that? Yeah, it happens all the time. Because you get referred to them by your coworker or the friend of the friend, and she's like, "Oh, you need to go see my friend Janie. She's so good. She's so good. She's so good. And, definitely, you need to go see her." So you're usually relying on a friend, and what the heck does the friend know? And then the next thing you know, you're wrangled in with this woman who, like I said, a couple weeks ago was an MLM boss babe and really has no photography skill or ability or anything else, and now you're handing over money to someone with little to no experience. And a very important question to ask: what is your experience in boudoir photography? Before you book, before you do anything, get on the phone or at a minimum exchange some emails, and always ask for how long they've been, maybe even how many clients they've worked with. That's a good thing to ask too. And another thing, ask if you can get a detailed portfolio of their work. If they don't have a lot of photos, well, if there isn't a website, that's kind of suspect, but you're looking on there and there's only a handful of pictures, or there's not many, or something doesn't look right about that, when you're chatting with that person, ask them to send you a link or whatever for a detailed portfolio, because you're curious in seeing the whole range and style of their work. And an experienced photographer will have tons of pictures. No problem. There's a couple galleries, and here's my Instagram feed going back years and years. You'll see all different women in there, all different kind of body shapes and styles, and black and white and regular. You should be a large variety of photos. That way you can get an idea of kind of the range of how that photographer works, whether you like their style or not. And again, don't be fooled if someone calls themselves a pro. Like I said, going back to our friend MLM Janie, she probably annoyed the out of one of her friends to pose for her. And it's like, "I don't want to do this, Janie. I really don't want to do this. You got to help me out because now I'm a pro photographer." So she talks one of her friends into doing a boudoir shoot, which is really bad. And they're just using like photos of one friend or two friends and posting them all over. And odds are they're going to have the obligatory caption, "She rocked it. She slayed it." They're going to use all this kind of boudoir kind of talk underneath, which again means nothing. Don't fall for boudoir narratives when it comes to dealing with photographers. Stick with the hard evidence. And so if you only see one or two women in there, that's a real red flag. It means that she just talked a friend into posing for a few pictures. So if the whole website is like one or two people, not a good sign. You want to look for a broad range of pictures, people, different styles, and so forth. So another important thing to check with a photographer, ask them about that. If you don't see a lot of pictures immediately on a website or like on an Instagram feed or something. And then another very important thing to ask a photographer, you wouldn't think that you had to, but you better be asking, is what is their approach to privacy and confidentiality? Seem fairly obvious, but as we always talk about, probably not something you're going to find on their website, right? What are they doing with all these photos after a session? What happens to them? Are they sitting on a computer forever? Your private stuff is just sitting there? So you would think this would be something obvious and covered again on a photographer's website. They may have a page dedicated to it or be part of their content in their about section. So if you don't see anything about what they're doing with these photos, their privacy policies or anything like that, start asking some questions. If it gets to that point where this person looks, like someone you may want to work with, then they should have some answers like, "Oh, we're encrypting everything," or "We're deleting everything." Make sure there's some thing that they're doing after the session to protect your images and privacy, and they're not, again, taking your photos and posting them online without your consent and so forth like that. Now, there's nothing wrong with photographers using pictures as long as the client, and these days a lot of people are like, yeah, you can use my pictures, that's fine. But they should be checking with you first whether that's okay or not, because not everyone wants photos shared. So always talk about privacy when it comes to any boudoir photographer. And that we're rolling along here, I'm going to leave one more shocking thing you should be asking your photographer. And that kind of falls in line with question 2 ago about how experienced they are. But, how do you feel about your editing skills? You doing your own editing? You outsourcing it? That's a critical part of the photo process, because boudoir photos are supposed to be about beauty and making women look great. And editing, much like learning the guitar or something takes time. It takes time to develop a style. It takes time to develop technique. It takes time to learn how to do that. And odds are, if you're talking to MLM Janie and she just started her business 2 weeks ago, she's either not very good or at all with editing photos, or sometimes, which could be more of a concern, she's outsourcing her editing, and which means she's taking your private photos and sending them to somebody else to do the work for her, and you may not know what's going on once those photos get out of her hands, and who knows she's sending them to, and what their privacy policy is, and do you want your photos somebody else to be seeing them? So that's an important thing to ask. If they're editing them, are they sending them off to somebody to edit? This is just something, don't assume. When great editing is like makeup. It should enhance who you are, and make you look like the best version of you, right? So these are some things that, shockingly, you may think are kind of standard in the world of boudoir photography, but they are anything but. And that's why we're doing this show. You've got to ask these questions, especially as we're getting into fall. A lot of people, like I said, getting ready to do sessions for Christmas or for their weddings. And you don't want to wind up in the hands of somebody that's not skilled or experienced or a good editor, or is not going to take care of your material and be respectful of your privacy. So that's why we're doing this. I hate to keep repeating some of these things over and over again, but they're important, and I'll keep saying it till you do it. You doing it? You doing it? I hope so. And so that's what I got for you today. A couple of quick pointers and shocking things you should be asking any boudoir photographer you're booking with. So hopefully that was helpful, and we want you to have a good, safe, smart session with results that you'll enjoy for years to come. And boudoir is a fun experience, and we want everyone to have a good time. But as we noted again, the waters out there can be sometimes kind of choppy, and you need to dig a little deeper than you think you may, especially in the world of women's photography. So always ask questions, always chat with a photographer. When I was doing it this week, a woman called me up from North Carolina, wants to travel up here. I make time. I answer any questions they may have. She was grilling me with a lot of questions, and I'm happy to answer. I have nothing to hide, So, photographer you're talking to, write things down, know what you should expect to hear, and if things don't kind of sound the way that you want them to, or they're kind of dodgy on a few of these, or they don't really have great answers, just continue the conversation, thank them, and it's probably best to move along to another contender. And you got to keep doing it sometimes. It's a little bit of work till you find someone in your area that you're comfortable with, that answers the questions, that has good privacy policy and good experience, and you get along with them. It's a bit more work than you may initially think, but it's worth it. So that's our show for this week. I want to thank everybody for listening, and have a good weekend. I'm going to enjoy my ribs that are cooking in the oven right now shortly, and relax. I'll just kick back the rest of tonight, and who knows? I think I'm going to be watching some football. So whatever you're going to be doing this weekend, enjoy yourself, and thanks for stopping by, and I will chat to you next week. See ya, everybody.